2 a.m. on call. They had declined chaplain visits. It was 2 o'clock in the morning and I was on call. The nurse contacted me and said, "I've given him enough meds by now to knock out a horse. And still, for hours, he's been wrestling and thrashing and moaning. This pain is spiritual, not physical. Can you come?" I arrived at the patient's home and spoke with his wife of almost 40 years. He lay in a hospital bed in the middle of their living room. Everyone was there. Their young adult children sat vigil by their father's side. There was nothing left undone that they knew of. They were an open, honest family who used very down-to-earth language. Remembering that they had declined spiritual care services, I asked, "Do you know what, if anything, your husband believes comes next after this life?" She looked a little embarrassed and said, I'm not sure," and then told me their story. Both had been raised in a very conservative faith tradition that preached hellfire and brimstone, she said. They each experienced it as harsh and destructive, so they left organized religion in college. They taught their children they were loved by God and to be loving to others, but beyond that, we never looked back, she said. I considered this for a moment and then asked, "Is there any chance some of those childhood images of God are coming back to haunt him and he's afraid?" Recognition lit up her face, and she lifted her chest in a stunned intake of awareness as she turned to me and said, "Oh my gosh, that's it. Will you talk to him, please, and tell him it's going to be okay?" I put up my hand as if to ward off the idea and apologetically reminded her, "That's not what we chaplains do. We're not prescriptive, telling people what to believe. We help them sort through their beliefs and find their own answers. He's not responsive. I don't care." She stepped toward me in desperate intensity. "You go in there," she pointed at the living room, "and you tell him whatever you have to. You let him know that it's all going to be okay. Please." Conflicting standards and ethics rattled in my head as I simply agreed and said, "Yes, ma'am." I walked slowly toward the living room, collecting my thoughts. The family said they wanted to give us privacy and went together into a back bedroom. I guess they also needed a break from the hours of watching him struggle. I knelt beside his bed as he thrashed, twisting the bed sheets around and under him as he did. The rails of the hospital bed kept him from falling, and the nurse had the bed lowered almost all the way to the ground, just in case. His moans and sighs seemed tortured, but he hadn't been able to speak for days, the family had told me. Nothing seemed to calm him, and this had gone on for many hours, through the afternoon and entire evening. In healthcare, we act and speak as if the patient can hear and understand us. It is both a sign of respect to always treat the patient with dignity, as well as an acknowledgement of the brain scans at the end of life that my medical colleagues tell me indicate the last senses to leave us are smell and hearing. I sat cross-legged on the sunken floor in the middle of the comfortable living room next to the head of his bed. "Hello, Mr. Jones. I'm Carla, one of the hospice chaplains. You and your wife have a beautiful family. She tells me you were raised in a conservative faith tradition, as was I, but that it wasn't a good experience for you, and I get that." His eyes remained closed, but his head turned slightly my direction, his agitated movements and groans beginning to slow. "I wonder if some part of you is scared that you're about to go meet a very pissed-off God who's ready to make you toast. I don't know about you, but I've come to believe in a God who loves you just as much as you love those grown babies in there, and who says, there is nothing you've done and nothing that's been done to you that will ever make me stop loving you. My best hope and prayer is that when you step from this life into the next, you'll be greeted by a God with arms open wide who beams at you and says, welcome home, son. I love you and I've missed you. Immediately, his body relaxed and his loud murmurs were replaced by the sound of his first deep breath in over 9 hours. I called for his family, who ran into the room and gathered around as he took one more last big, deep breath that washed out of him in a great sigh. We all knelt there in stunned silence at the rapid turn of events after so many hours of painful witness of his struggle. And then finally, his young adult son, this tall, muscled, dimpled, 28-year-old baby boy, said into the silence, son of a bitch, I swear he just smiled. And he was. He was absolutely beaming. Did the medicines finally take effect? Did he hear what he needed to hear? We'll never know. But the experience has lasted with me ever since. And the family later explained to me that just seeing their husband and father calm and content for his last 40 seconds on earth made all the difference in their grieving. After 9 long hours of watching his tortured grappling, they knew he finally died in peace. I tried to use his belief system to address his spiritual pain, but I never could have done so had a nurse not recognized that the pain she was witnessing and trying to treat could not be touched by narcotics. I believe we must help all disciplines and families better understand and recognize the necessity of tending to spiritual wounds as part of treating the whole person. The more we understand, the better able we will be to treat the whole person and, by extension, tend to the needs of the family and prevent unnecessarily complicated grief and suffering for them as well. This, and so many other reasons just like it, is why I am extremely humbled and grateful for this work that we get to do in hospice.